Hey guys, look, I don't come here as the person with the ultimate solution. Okay, I don't have the ultimate solution, but I can tell you where the problems are and where you can start to find a way to solve problems. In terms of India, the biggest problem I see is not that there isn't a forward, or if that the forward that they have is 40 years old and he had to come out of retirement to be able to play once again with the national team. The problem isn't the lack of talent, as Manolo Marquez said. The problem is that there's a lack of coaching and a lack of real coaching. And I'm not saying it in a disparaging manner, please. No. Don't get me. Don't get things twisted. I'm not saying it in a derogatory manner. I'm saying that the opportunities that are being given to certain coaches aren't there, and the opportunities that are being given to some because of their nationality are quite plentiful. And to be quite honest, I haven't seen those coaches truly and honestly give that great a performance to make them so much more convincing, better, overwhelmingly superior to anybody else. And I say that because there needs to be an end to the obsession of influences, because I see that a lot in a lot of developing football countries. Let's call it that way. I've seen it a lot in the United States because they've gone from the Dutch school to the German school to being overly obsessive with English coaches to now, what the hell are we going to do? To an Argentine coach that's more European influenced. I've seen it in a lot of cases. I've seen it in a lot of different situations. And I see it with India too, that there's this obsession with Spanish coaches, but Spanish coaches that aren't Guardiolistic in terms of their principles. Just, they happen to be Spanish. They happen to have certain ways of seeing the game that because they're from Spain, oh, let's get them. I personally don't see it that way. Maybe there needs to be a shift in terms of mindset, in terms of where to go and how to look at it. Those are my own personal opinions, and when asked, I will give them. That looking for players to nationalize, that could solve some problems, but that's just a Band-Aid. Because then you have to be constantly recruiting. Now, if you want to look for descendants of Indians, or of people from players from Indian families that live in the United States or that live in the UK, that could be a workaround. But how much of a workaround is it? We'll have to wait and see, but it has to be something that has to be done. That's an issue there. Going back to the coaching, I didn't want to hop around as much as I am right now. You have to have a coach that can't just say, well, maybe that's all there is. Great. You signed up for it, though. You knew what's there. You coached in India. You coach in India. And you know the talent inside out, outside in, backwards and forwards, or at least one would think. Now, Manolo Marquez saying that is basically inadmissible. He needs to go and say, well, you know what? Yeah, this is what we have. This is the talent that we have. Well, you know what you need to do? You need to start looking for a system where you can maximize players. Maybe not call the best players available. Maybe call the players that can fill a function the best. Those are the two avenues you have to look at it. Based on what I've seen, I didn't see neither. Because the first match, that's a throwaway. Because in reality, they should have won by 6, 7, 8 goals. But they only won by 3. The Bangladesh match is the one where you have to start looking in terms of the true measure of India. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm disparaging, and I'm not, because there is a reality. And it has to be said that, yeah, there's a limitation. When you start playing teams that are just as good as you or better, just as good as you or better, well, there's a need to find something else where you can evolve tactically and from a positioning standpoint. It's not just, let's close our eyes, kick the ball as far forward as possible and hope Sunil Chetri gets it and can dribble past 3 or 4 players. I'm talking about when you start playing teams that are better than you. If that's the effort, if the intent is to raise that proverbial bar, well, you have to start looking at it from that perspective. Okay, what can we do better? Well, that's one thing. Start to honestly and sincerely look to develop players better. And with that, you have to look at coaching. They both go hand in hand. You need to get coaches more practice time, less theoretical, more practical. Because India have coaches that know football, but from a very book smart perspective, a lot of them. Or maybe you have to find a coach that understands the idiosyncrasy of it instead of being in his own bubble. Or a coach that's willing to come in and learn about the idiosyncrasy of Indian football or Indian football players, and based on that, be able to create a system or be able to create a culture around the national team that maximizes the players as best as possible. Because right now, many of these players aren't good enough. They're not good enough for the national team. But you can't start looking at short-term replacements. It's easy because you hear it and it sounds fancy and it sounds really sophisticated and it sounds something that gives you... No. At the end of the day, it doesn't work because you start looking at players that weren't looking at you as your first option. Okay? Weren't looking at you as your first option. They're more advanced in age. You have to have a system that's very short-term implemented for those types of players to be able to come in. You just can't insert a player into a system or can't insert a system into a player and expect them to function properly. Bringing in a foreign-based player, a nationalized player, doesn't automatically grant you success. Just ask Mexico. Just ask Mexico. Ask them. See how that's fared. That's the thing you have to look at when you're looking at Indian football. It's not just what goes on in terms of results and wins and losses and statistics. Indian fans have to stop looking at statistics and statistics only. It's not cricket. It's not cricket. Let me be front and center, honest with you. Don't look at statistics. Because then you start to lose a little of the nuance of why. Now, don't get me wrong. The statistics are good in telling you what happened. But if you don't know how you got there, you don't know how to get there again. When you start looking for results and you base it solely on numbers, it's like me going and having a GPS tell me where to go based on the numbers, based on the coordinates, based on all that. But when it's time for me to go look for it for myself, if I didn't look at the path and if I didn't look at how I got there, it does me no good. Because I can't repeat the formula once again without having those in mind. I have to have a combination of both. But there's this over-reliance on statistics that borders on ridiculous. Now, again, I'm not saying don't look at statistics. I'm not saying forget about them. Don't even... No, they tell you, and not only that, once you get there and you look at them, you oh, they make sense. That has to do a lot with it too. There is no magic formula. There is no thing. And that's the reason why I say I don't have an absolute truth, because I don't. But I do know something. I do know that short-term fixes and formulas that magically make you play better aren't there. This is a 20, 30-year experience that's going to have to be endured by Indian football fans. Whoever tells you it's 5, whoever tells you it's 10, look, I've already been through it. For the past 20, 30 years in the United States, being told in 10 years we're going to win a World Cup. Just recently, I've had you see people in media in the United States telling you we're going to win the World Cup. We have a chance to win the World Cup in 2026. Again, I'm not here to disparage. I'm not here to minimize. I'm just here to give a reality check on the situation of the moment. Because I've seen it so many times and it repeats itself over and over again because there's this desire, and I understand the desire of wanting to be something, of wanting to be greater, of wanting to improve, of wanting to see a winning product. I understand that. But the thing is that when you're given magic formulas and you're given all types of quick fix solutions, more often than not, they don't work. They do not work. Unless you work them properly. Unless they're part of an overall, overreaching long-term plan, It's not going to work. So that's where I end up being disappointed in terms of seeing what happens with Indian football, because it is a product that has such great potential. If not, I would have gone halfway around the world to start doing commentary on it. But yet at times I see that there's certain things that aren't being done well. My advice to start out, look at those that you admire most. Which are the countries that Indian football fans admire, support, and root for the most? My next question would be, why? My next question after that, how did they get there? And my next question after that, what do I have to do to start to take that path? I'm not saying to get there. I'm saying to emulate that path. I don't know where it will take you, but if done properly, you could go in that right direction. Sky's the limit, folks. Sky's the limit. You let me know what you think. Talk to you soon.